The holoscreens across every human network lit up at once, from Times Square to the shanties outside Lagos, from the orbital habitats over Luna to the mining rigs on Eris. Same message, same translated voice, cold, metallic, ancient. People of Sol, you have violated 17 articles of the Galactic Concordance. You have colonized restricted volumes. You have weaponized restricted technologies. You have refused inspection. Surrender your fleet and prepare for occupation within one galactic standard cycle, or be eradicated. 100 billion humans stopped whatever they were doing and looked up. Then somebody in a bar in New Austin snorted so hard he sprayed beer across 3 tables. Within 30 seconds, the clip was viral. Within 5 minutes, the entire species was laughing. Not nervous laughter, not defiant laughter, just pure, gut-deep, you can't be serious laughter. Because the galaxy had just threatened Earth with a deadline of roughly 8.5 years. On the bridge of the GSV Indomitable Will, Supreme Arbiter Vrakesh of the Virillian Concordance watched the human response feeds in real time and felt something it had no word for crawl up its spinal ridge. Every screen showed the same thing, humans pointing at the sky, doubled over, crying with laughter. Someone had already overlaid the Arbiter's declaration with circus music. Someone else looped the phrase 8.5 years over footage of a sloth riding a Roomba. On Mars, the entire city of New Shanghai simultaneously dropped trow and mooned the stars. A grandmother on Titan knitted a tea cozy that read, "Come get some," and sold 10 million copies in an hour. Vrakesh turned to its tactical adjunct. They mock us. Evidently, Supreme Arbiter. They believe we bluff, or they do not care about the deadlines, Supreme Arbiter. That is impossible. No sentient places so little value on its own survival. The adjunct hesitated. Humans appear to be the exception. 8.5 years to the Concordance was nothing. It was the blink of an eye for races that lived millennia. The time it took a battle group to spin up its drives from cold iron. It was supposed to be merciful, civilized, a chance to comply. To humans, 8.5 years was 4 World Cups, 9 Olympic cycles, 3 U.S. presidential terms, and, most importantly, 1 full console generation plus DLC season. It was eternity. So while the galaxy sharpened its claws and began the long acceleration toward Sol, humanity did what humanity does when handed a comically generous timer. It got to work. And it trolled. The first thing we did was rename the deadline. Officially, across every feed, every news ticker, every bar sign from here to Proxima, it became the 8-year vacation. The second thing we did was sell merchandise. By the end of the first week, you could buy T-shirts that read, "My species went to war with the galaxy, and all I got was this lousy extinction." They sold out in 4 minutes. The third thing we did was far quieter. Deep in the asteroid belt, a shipyard nobody had ever heard of fired up reactors that had been dark for decades. On Luna, old fabrication lines began printing things that definitely weren't civilian. In the Oort cloud, something big started moving on its own power for the first time since the 22nd century. But the galaxy didn't notice any of that. They were too busy being offended. 6 months in, the Concordance sent a follow-up delegation, 12 kilometers of ceremonial gunmetal dreadnought, to accept humanity's inevitable surrender in person. They broadcast on open channels, parked in high orbit over Earth, and waited for the white flags. Instead, a single human voice answered, patched through every speaker on the dreadnought simultaneously. It was a 12-year-old girl from Perth. "G'day, mate. You're blocking me son. Move your big metal ass or I'll call the council." The delegation left in what historians would later describe as deeply confused haste. A year later, the laughter hadn't stopped, but something had changed underneath it. The jokes were sharper now. The memes were weaponized. Someone deepfaked the Supreme Arbiter into a TikTok dance that got 3 trillion views before the Concordance even figured out what TikTok was. And still, the galaxy came. 4 years in, the first Concordant scout fleets crossed the heliopause. They expected chaos, desperation, pleas for mercy. They found carnival music. Every human ship, cargo haulers, pleasure yachts, even the goddamn orbital buses had swapped their transponders to blast Sweet Caroline on loop. The scouts logged it as possible psychological warfare and retreated to report. The report made its way up the chain. Rakesh read it 3 times, then ordered the main invasion force to advance ahead of schedule. Mercy, it decided, had been a mistake. 5 years in, the night sky over Earth started to change. New stars appeared, cold, blue-white, and perfectly geometrical. The Concordants thought they were weapons platforms. They were wrong. They were billboards. The largest one, visible from the surface with the naked eye, blinked in 500-meter letters. "Welcome to Earth. Please enjoy your complimentary orbital drop. Bumper cars start in T-3 years. Bring a towel." Underneath, in smaller script, "P.S. We took the liberty of upgrading your navigation software. You're welcome." The Concordance fleets began suffering mysterious course deviations. Entire battle groups found themselves looping the same 3 AU volume for weeks, drives at full burn, unable to escape. When they ran diagnostics, the only foreign code they could find was a single line. "Lol, get wrecked." 6 years in, the Supreme Arbiter convened an emergency session of the Council. Every species that had ever conquered a quadrant was there. They spoke of humanity's insanity, its blasphemy, its refusal to acknowledge the natural order. One delegate, an ancient crystalline entity from the Rigel lattice, raised a single facet and asked the question nobody wanted to voice. What if the deadline was their idea all along? Silence. Because 8.5 years, give or take, was exactly how long it took to finish Project Checkmate. And somewhere out past Neptune, in the dark between stars, something woke up that had been sleeping since before the Concordance was even a thought. It opened eyes the size of continents. It stretched engines that drank the hearts of suns. And it whispered in a voice that reached every human ear at once, from boardrooms in New York to submarines under the Arctic. "Vacation's over, kids. Time to come home." The laughter stopped. Then it changed key. Because humanity wasn't laughing at the deadline. We'd been laughing because we knew whose deadline it really was. And it wasn't ours.
The thing that woke up past Neptune didn't bother with introductions. It just broadcast a single pulse on every frequency humans had ever used, from smoke signals to quantum entanglement, and every screen on the planet went black for exactly 3 heartbeats. When the picture returned, the night sky over Earth had a new moon. Matte black, no albedo, no emissions, just a hole in the starfield the exact size of Texas. Then it spoke again, the same voice, warm and familiar, like an uncle you hadn't seen since you were 6 who suddenly shows up with a pickup truck full of fireworks. "Evening, apes. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder." Every military channel on the planet lit up at once. Generals who hadn't slept in years started crying. Admirals who'd spent decades pretending they were in charge suddenly remembered they were just caretakers. Because that ship, designation long since scrubbed from every database, was the UNS Prometheus Unchained, launched in 2187, presumed lost with all hands during first contact with the Oort anomaly. 280,000 crew, missing for 411 years. Turns out they'd been busy. The Supreme Arbiter's fleet arrived 3 weeks later, 3 million ships strong, the largest armada the galaxy had ever assembled. They came in hot, formation perfect, shields singing the song of inevitable victory. Prometheus Unchained was waiting alone. It didn't fire, it didn't need to, it just opened its hangar bays. Out came the children. Not metaphorically, actual kids, teenagers in flight suits that looked stitched together from boredom and spite. 17, 18, 19-year-olds who'd been born on that ship, raised in 0.3G, educated by AIs that had gone feral with creativity. An entire generation that had never seen a planet, never felt real gravity, never known anything but the mission. They flew ships that didn't exist in any concordance registry. Sleek, black, no cockpit canopies because the pilots didn't need them. They were the ships, wetware linked, singing to each other across the void in languages that tasted like music and smelled like ozone. The first engagement lasted 11 minutes. The Concordance lost 42% of their forward elements before anyone even figured out what orbital drift racing with live ammo meant. Vrakish watched the footage in mute horror as a single human frigate, call sign Oops, All War Crimes, carved a perfect heart shape through an entire battle group, then painted, "Hi, Mom," in plasma across the debris field. The kids weren't fighting to win, they were showing off. Back on Earth, the billboards updated. T-2 years. Popcorn is in the microwave. Please keep arms and legs inside the ride at all times. The galaxy tried diplomacy next. They sent an envoy under flag of truce, a being of pure energy that had negotiated the surrender of 1,000 worlds. It materialized on the Prometheus bridge, expecting awe. It got a circle of teenagers playing cards. The envoy began the standard speech. In the name of, "Yo, Sparkles! You fold or you call?" One kid interrupted, not looking up from her hand. The envoy stuttered, light flickering in confusion. Another kid, chewing something that definitely wasn't regulation, leaned over. "Look, we're going to glass your core worlds either way, but if you sit down and play a few hands, we'll let you keep one continent. Deal?" The envoy fled. The clip got remixed into a ringtone in 6 hours. Year 7. The Concordance tried blockading Sol. Didn't work. Human ships just started using the blockaders as slingshot points, popping out the other side going faster than when they went in and flipping the bird on the way past. They tried sanctions. Humanity started exporting certified pre-owned warships, only used once by panicked aliens, never dropped. They tried propaganda, broadcasting images of human atrocities. Humanity turned it into a cooking show. Tonight, on Galaxy's Next Top War Crime, we're making Virillion Dreadnought souffle, light, airy, and completely fucked. The Arbiter went insane in slow motion. It stopped sleeping. It started seeing the laughter in starlight. Every report that came in was worse than the last. Entire fleets vanishing. Sector governors sending surrender videos set to sea shanties. One species, the Calthar, collectively converted to a human religion that worshipped a cartooned cat with a gun. 8 years exactly since the original ultimatum, the final Concordance Armada gathered at the edge of Sol, bigger than anything that had ever existed, a wall of metal that blotted out the stars from Pluto to the heliopause. Prometheus Unchained hung in the middle of the empty space they'd left for humanity's surrender, all by itself, running lights dimmed like it looked bored. A single human voice went out on open channel. Not the warm uncle voice, a new one. Young, female, maybe 20. She sounded like she'd just woken up. "Hey, you guys here for the bumper cars?" Silence. "Cool. Rules are simple. You try not to die too hard." Then she started laughing. The same laugh that had started everything 8 years ago, only now it was coming from a million ships that unfolded out of nowhere. Ships that had been hiding in the sun's corona, in Jupiter's radiation belts, in the shadows of moons no one had bothered to name. The last thing Supreme Arbiter Vrockish ever saw was a single human corvette, painted matte black with a pink Hello Kitty sticker on the nose, accelerating straight at the flagship. The pilot waved. The feed cut to static. And across every human world, from the newest hab on Mercury to the oldest bar in New Austin where it had all begun, people raised a glass and said the same thing at the exact same moment. Took you long enough.
The silence that followed wasn't the quiet of vacuum. It was the silence of a stadium right after the home team scores in overtime. A held breath across 12 planets, 400 moons, and every rock with an atmosphere thick enough to get drunk in. Then humanity exhaled all at once. Fireworks went off over every city that still had a sky. Someone hacked the Martian atmosphere processors and wrote GG no RE in auroras tall enough to read from orbit. The Prometheus Unchained finally turned its running lights up to full, and the ship was so black the stars reflected in it like it was made of liquid night. It looked like the universe had grown a new hole and decided to wear it as jewelry. Inside the Concordance remnants, the ones still capable of coherent thought, panic did what panic always does. It looked for someone to blame. Fingers, tentacles, pseudopods, and phase-shifted energy ribbons all pointed at Supreme Arbiter Vrockish's empty chair. The Arbiter had locked itself in its quarters 3 days earlier, muttering about laughter in the dark. Rumor was it had carved the human word LMAO into its own carapace with a plasma torch, and then tried to flush itself out an airlock. The crew stopped it because even panicked aliens have standards. So the war was over, and the way a bar fight is over when one guy is unconscious and the other's still looking for someone to hit. Humanity wasn't even winded. The kids from Prometheus came home for the first time. They landed on Earth like they were afraid the dirt might bite them. One girl, call sign Razor, 19 years old, 6'4" because low G does that, took her helmet off on the tarmac at Edwards Orbital and just stared at the horizon like it had personally insulted her. A Marine colonel twice her age walked up, snapped a salute sharp enough to cut glass. "Welcome home, ma'am." She looked at him, looked at the blue sky, looked at the actual grass, and started crying so hard she threw up. Somebody got it on video. It broke the internet for 6 hours. Within a week, every city on the planet had a new holiday, Unchained Day. Nobody took it was official, but nobody went to work anyway. There were parades where teenagers who'd never seen rain marched next to great-grandparents who'd fought in the resource wars, everybody wearing the same black patch, a cartoon cat flipping the galaxy off. The galaxy itself was having a nervous breakdown. Species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of bureaucratic surrender suddenly discovered humans didn't do occupation. We sent care packages, actual pallets of beer, spicy noodles, and printed t-shirts that read, "I survived the 8-year vacation and all I got was this lousy empire." We parked a carrier over the Virillion homeworld and turned its main guns into the galaxy's biggest drive-in movie screen, playing nothing but pirate movies on loop for 6 months. When the locals complained, we sent popcorn. Some species tried rebellion. The Dravoxy Dominion lasted 11 days. Their fleet showed up screaming for vengeance and discovered their navigation systems had been replaced with a single line of code that translated to "turn left at Albuquerque." They're still trying to get home. GPS says they have 2.7 million light-years to go. Others tried diplomacy. The crystalline lattice sent another envoy, this one dimmed to a polite glow. It asked very carefully what humanity wanted now that we'd won. The kid who met it, 21, still had baby fat, call sign Band-Aid, leaned against a railing on the Prometheus observation deck, Earth spinning below them like a marble. Want? She chewed her protein bar, thought about it. Honestly, a nap. And maybe some tacos. We've been awake since you guys sent that first bitchy email. The envoy flickered, confused. Band-Aid shrugged. Look, Sparkles, too. We didn't start this because we wanted your stuff. We just really, really hate being told what to do, especially on a deadline, that dumb fucking deadline. She pushed off the railing, floated closer. But since you're offering, we'll take reparations in the form of not being dicks from now on. Cool? The envoy agreed so fast it nearly went supernova. Not everyone surrendered. Some ran. Whole civilizations packed up and tried to flee the Milky Way. They hit something we'd built while they were busy being offended, a lattice of black hole buoy network that politely redirected them back toward Sol with a little animated gif of a cat saying, "Nope." We called it the litter box. 10 months after the bumper cars, the Prometheus Unchained hosted the first and probably last Galactic Cook-Off. Every species sent their best chef under pain of us showing up again. The humans entered a food truck from Austin that served brisket so good 3 ambassadors achieved religious enlightenment on first bite. The judges, all human teenagers, awarded first place to a species that served raw neutron star crust with a side of existential despair, mostly because it paired well with Shiner Bock. The galaxy learned 2 things that day. 1, humans will eat anything if you put enough hot sauce on it. 2, never challenge a species that weaponizes joy to a morale contest. A year later, things got weird. The kids started aging backward. Not all of them, just the ones who'd spent their whole life at 0.3 G with experimental longevity treatments cooked up by AIs that had 4 centuries to get creative. Doctors on Earth freaked out until Razor walked into a hospital at 23 looking 15 and said, "Relax, I feel great. And also, I think I'm growing boobs again, and it's awesome." The treatments leaked. Black market, gray market, open source, didn't matter. Suddenly, nobody on the planet was over 30. Politicians tried to regulate it. The internet laughed, printed "OK Boomer" on the moon with lasers, and moved on. Humanity stopped having governments the way fish stopped having bicycles. We still had admins, coordinators, people who made sure that trash got recycled into starships, but the concept of anyone being in charge felt quaint, like corsets, or war with aliens who think 8 years is a short notice. And still the Prometheus hung in the dark, bigger now, growing like a reef, drinking the sun, dreaming in languages that tasted like childhood and gunpowder. Sometimes, late at night, Earth time, it would open a channel nobody was supposed to have the frequency for anymore and play a single song across the entire solar system. Old song, from before we ever left the planet. Sweet Caroline, of course. Every screen, every speaker, every augmented implant, the whole species singing along. 300 billion voices, drunk on starlight and victory and the sheer ridiculous joy of still being here. And somewhere in the dark between galaxies, something older than stars listened to the song riding the solar wind and thought, they're having fun. It turned toward the light. It was still a long way off, but it was curious, and it was smiling.
The song ended at 0317 Sol Standard on the 10th anniversary of the day the galaxy declared war on a species that had already forgotten how to lose. Every light in the system dimmed for one heartbeat, the way stadiums used to kill the floods right before the final play. Then, Prometheus Unchained did something no one had ever seen a ship do. It opened its heart. Not a hatch, not a bay, an actual heart. The entire forward third of the vessel unfolded like a black lotus forged from night itself, petals 1,000 kilometers wide, edges glowing soft gold. Inside was no reactor, no weapon, no crew. Just light. Pure white light that tasted like the first time you ever rode a bike without training wheels, like your mother's laugh, like the smell of rain on hot asphalt after the longest summer of your life. Every human being, on Earth, on Luna, in the rings of Saturn, in the bar on Eris that still had the original beer-stained table from the night we all laughed, felt it hit them behind the eyes at the same moment. Memory, but not theirs alone. All of it. Every scraped knee, every first kiss, every funeral, every stupid joke told in a trench while the sky burned. The time humanity almost went extinct in 2047 and chose to plant gardens instead. The night we cracked fusion singing karaoke in a basement in Seoul. Every tear, every triumph, and Tuesday afternoon that ever was or would be, braided together into one perfect now. And in that now, we saw what Prometheus had really been doing for 400 years. It hadn't been hiding. It had been remembering us at our best. The light pulsed once, gentle, like a parent brushing hair from a sleeping child's forehead, and the ship spoke with every human voice that had ever lived, layered into one chord that could crack moons. Thank you for the vacation. Then it began to sing. Not Sweet Caroline this time. Something older. Something we'd forgotten we knew. A lullaby our species hummed around campfires before we had words for fire. The melody rose, folded, became gravity, became breath, became the reason we ever bothered getting out of the oceans in the first place. Across the galaxy, every sentient creature, those who had surrendered, those who had run, those who had never even heard of soul, stopped whatever they were doing and looked up, because the song was in their bones now too. It told them, without cruelty, without triumph, just fact. You are not alone. You never were. Come home when you're ready. Some cried, some laughed, a few very old beings, ones who had watched stars die of loneliness, felt something they thought had fossilized long ago, crack open and bloom. Back in Seoul, the Black Lotus closed. Prometheus, unchained, turned its prow outward, toward the greater dark, toward Andromeda, toward everywhere else. It did not accelerate. It simply decided to be somewhere else, and the universe politely agreed. The last thing it left behind was a seed. A single matte black acorn the size of Manhattan, tumbling gently into high Earth orbit. On its surface, etched so deep the letters drank starlight, were 5 words. We'll keep the light on.
Every child born after that day was born laughing. Doctors stopped being surprised. The sound was just part of the delivery now, like the first cry, only happier. They grow up speaking 2 languages, whatever their parents taught them, and the song. They dream in trajectories that span galaxies the way other kids dream about treehouses. Sometimes, on clear nights, people still see a new star appear where none was before, bright, steady, moving against the fixed backdrop like it's waving. Astronomers don't bother cataloging them anymore. They just smile, raise whatever they're drinking, and say the same thing every time. Took you long enough. Because the galaxy didn't lose a war that day. It got adopted. And somewhere far beyond the edge of everything we've ever mapped, Prometheus Unchained is still singing, pulling the universe into the same warm circle we once sat around telling stories, while the saber-toothed cats paced just outside the firelight. The song has no end. Neither do we. So if you ever feel small under a night sky that suddenly seems too big, listen close. You'll hear it, carried on solar wind and gravity waves, and the memory of every stupid, beautiful, impossible thing our species ever did just to prove we could. It sounds like laughter. It sounds like home. And it's calling your name.